In the mid to late 2000s, Western RPGs were on the rise, moving forward with hero-centric, narrative-driven content that placed the player at the forefront of decisions that could change the game's world state, affecting other games in the series. Following on the footsteps of CD Projekt Red's The Witcher, was BioWare's Dragon Age Origins. To be honest, neither of these two games had crossed my radar around the time that they were released, as I was too busy lapping up any console JRPG that I could find. However, after having completed and reviewed all the Witcher games on this channel previously, I found myself hungering for another big Western developed adventure and settled on the Dragon Age series. Dragon Age Origins was developed by BioWare and published by Electronic Arts for the Sony PlayStation 3, Mac OS X, Windows, and Xbox 360 across all territories in 2009. Whilst I have dabbled with the PC version of the game in the past, for the purposes of this review, I played the game on the Sony PlayStation 3 on normal difficulty for the most part. One thing that I will note right off the bat, which is a disappointment, and may deter you from playing the game in this format, is that it appears that the Dragon Age servers are down for the Sony PlayStation 3, meaning that you cannot share your character data or achievements with the server. Additionally, I did not appear to be able to download any of the DLC. Also, as I had purchased the original game rather than the Ultimate Edition, I missed out on being able to experience most of the additional content. While some of that plays into the base game, with the addition of a recruitable character and some locations as well as some armor, Dragon Age Origins also had a few standalone DLCs that I may have to visit in the future on my PC. With that out of the way, let's get into the review. The game begins with some exposition on the background of Thedas, the continent that you'll be lumbering across. Years passed, some magic users got greedy and opened the path into heaven. Finding their way to a golden city, they managed to blacken it with their presence, ushering in the first Blight as they were cast out as Darkspawn, hellish creatures that kill and corrupt anything they touch indiscriminately. There have been multiple Blights over the ages, but each time they were stopped by the Order of Grey Wardens, a group of outcasts and kings, beggars and saints, who have sworn their lives to protect the people of Thedas from the Darkspawn horde. Sadly, it has been 400 years since the previous Blight, where gratitude has become lost to the fog of memory, and the Grey Warden numbers have dwindled to a point where they no longer have the ear and coffer of kings. In the absence of experiencing abject horror, the people of Thedas are complacent in their lives, gazes turned toward political infighting rather than outward to the looming threat that spreads like brimstone across the southern horizon. Another Blight is imminent, and the people are not ready. Maker help us all. Before we begin the game, we are asked to create our character. Once you have chosen a gender, race, class, and relegated background, you are then asked to change the look of your protagonist. I must have a thing for blonde guys that have the same dumbass stare, as my character ended up looking like a baby-faced version of my Commander Shepard from the Mass Effect series. Anyway, what you choose in the beginning screen will shape the future of your character and determine which of the 6 origin stories you get to play through. This orients your character within the overall conflict and gives them a purpose and motivation within the narrative rather than being an extra in the background. I'm looking at you, White Knight Chronicles. For this playthrough, I chose a human warrior, which automatically made him the son of a noble of the estate of Highever. Enter Agares. Agares is the son of Agares Cousland, a hero of a war which saw him drive foreign nationals out of the lands of Thedas. When news of a Blight comes to the estate, Bryce does not hesitate to assemble troops to assist with the war effort, along with one of his vassal houses, the Heralds. On the eve of departure, Duncan, a Grey Warden, has also come to the Highever lands in search of new conscripts to recruit to his order. After everyone retires for the evening, Agares is rudely awoken to the sound of screams and sword fighting, as it's discovered that Rendon Howe has brought in his army to attack the estate, whilst most of Bryce's men are marching off toward war. With almost all loyal soldiers and retainers slaughtered by his mother and faithful hound, Agares tries desperately to find a way to escape the situation. Running into Duncan along the way, Agares' mother bequeaths the Grey Warden to take her child away from the situation safely, while she stays behind with her husband, who they discover dying in the larder. Promising to keep Agares safe in return for a commitment from Bryce that Agares will join the Grey Wardens, Duncan escorts a young noble and his hound away from the sounds of steel and splintering wood. However, in this world, there is no rest for the weary. Straight out of the pot and into the fire, Duncan escorts Agares to Ostagar, the location that will become the final stand of Thedas against the Darkspawn. Before Agares can become an official member of the Grey Wardens, however, he must undertake the joining, a ritual that separates the wheat from the chaff by venturing deep into the Kokiri Wilds, a place overrun with Darkspawn, where it is also rumoured that a powerful witch resides. I really enjoyed that the narrative threw you straight into the fray, providing you with a reason to join the Grey Wardens whilst also allowing you to shape the personality of your character. Are they a willing participant in the Grey Warden Order, or are there other motivations driving their course, such as revenge, fame, or glory? After the slaughter of majority of the Couslands, I wanted nothing more than to exact revenge on Rendon Howe, and Agares would stop at nothing to do this. Within the constructs of narrative choice, it's possible to play your character in any way that you wish. I really enjoyed this, as it allowed me to define not only Agares' personality, but also form the relationships that he had with his companions and associates. BioWare are masters of storytelling when it comes to player choice, and the number of options presented in the various situations is proof of this. I enjoyed that I could make my character a calm, level-headed soldier, or an angry upstart, depending on how I felt about the various situations that he was placed into. I never really felt that the narrative choices deviated from my headcanon of my own character, and the displayed text was generally a good indication of the direction of the ensuing dialogue. There was one instance, however, where I was talking with a slave trader and thought selecting a dialogue option would give me more room for negotiation, but instead it closed the offer, leaving me to deal with a look of disgust and loss of trust from the present party members. This leads me on to the fact that there are always consequences to your actions. You may feel a certain way about a certain situation, but just like real life, not everyone is going to agree with you. Agree to help people too much, and Morrigan will openly show her disdain. Defile a holy relic, and those party members loyal to Andraste, a heavily revered religious figure of Thedas, will immediately turn their weapons upon you. Managing the expectations of my party members whilst not compromising Agares' values was a challenge that I enjoyed undertaking. Additionally, the reaction of NPCs within conversation will change based upon the composition of your party. For example, in Redcliffe, Sten decided he would interject a conversation with the mayor, expressing his distaste that women and children would cower rather than fight, to which the mayor responded in kind. Interactions like these made my companions feel more rounded and gave them agency within the narrative, bringing elements of their own beliefs and cultures rather than them being silent spectators. I can honestly say that I didn't dislike any of the characters and enjoyed switching them up from time to time in order to see not only how they would affect the story, but also how they would interact with each other as we continued our adventure. I must mention though that for all of Liliana's preaching about how useful she could be, there were a couple of occasions where she would just freeze in place, mouth aghast as glittering essence floated out of her esophagus in an eddying swirl. It would have been a spectacle to behold had we not been in battle, and had she not been like that for the entire duration of it. Speaking of our bard and the game's lore, a lot of it is shared via codexes, which can be collected during your travels and read at your own leisure. I tended to find that often some of the codexes would relate to one another, rehashing information that had already been told in a different codex, defeating the purpose of there being so many. However, if BioWare was trying to go the angle of multiple authors writing to the same topic, sometimes not agreeing with each other, that definitely came across in the various information on the same topic provided within the various codex entries. These were interesting to read in general, but some of them I felt were pointless and unnecessary for understanding the story or the general world, and I felt that it broke up the narrative, stopping to read them every time I picked one up. In order to better get to know your companions, on the other hand, rather than burying your nose in scrolls and self-help books and codexes, you have the option to camp on the world map, which will take you to an isolated field where your party members have pitched tents, not in their pants, although maybe some of them have, and swap stories over campfire. Here you can go around talking to each character, learning about their backgrounds and what makes them tick. I did enjoy this, however would have liked to see more scenes of them interacting with each other. Except for the characters interacting with your dog, they only tended to talk to each other out in the wild, sometimes at the most inopportune times. I felt that this was a missed opportunity that could have been improved upon. In order to increase the character's rating of you, you can either have discussions with them, where they favour your responses, or you can present them with gifts, which raises your approval rating. If your approval rating falls too low with a character by either providing the incorrect responses to their questions or by defiling an ancient artifact, they may end up leaving your party for good. So it always pays to keep what they think of you at the forefront of your mind. A high approval rating, in addition to unlocking character-specific attribute bonuses, may also unlock romance options. Unfortunately, for all of Alistair talking about licking a lamppost in winter, he was immune to Agares' charms. Travel across the vast continent of Thedas occurs on an overlay map where you select a point of interest and your characters will make their way there, represented by spreading blots of blood that inch their way along roads closer to your intended destination. Along the way, some swords may cross, drawing you into an event-scripted encounter which can be story-related or a random encounter, providing you with an opportunity to gain experience points and earn items. Initially, I didn't mind this, but found that when I was getting drawn into encounters with enemies that had a clear tactical advantage and my characters were getting slaughtered, I soon had a change of heart, and also eventually lowered the difficulty. Combat can commence anywhere at any time, though it isn't a random encounter, so don't worry about that, but you do always need to be on your toes, and save often, as quick save is not your friend. There were multiple times where I was caught out by relying on the quick save, causing me to have to redo the previous hour or so of content to get back to where I was before I died. Eventually, I got to the point where I would manually save after every battle, but then that presented another issue. On the PS3, the time it takes to save a game is immense. During the initial save process, the game pauses, however after this, it continues on, allowing you to move and interact with the world, whilst a floating banner advises you that the game is still saving. It is incredibly distracting, and really pulled me out of the game's diegesis, seeing the floating, saving content, "Don't turn off your system" notification. Battles themselves are a simple affair where you assign a target for your character to start wailing upon with whatever weapon they happen to have to hand. You can intersperse a character's normal physical attack with a class-specific ability that will go on cooldown after each use. The trick to prevent yourself from being overwhelmed is taking out the enemies using might and magic, keeping them knocked off their feet or stunned so that they cannot retaliate, and picking them off one by one. This strategy doesn't always work, however, especially when you are up against enemy mages or there is a mage in your party. As magic is very volatile, friendly fire is possible, and some spells react against each other, causing large explosions, damaging everyone in the vicinity. I enjoyed that this played into the lore of magic being a dangerous practice that needed to be leashed, however it often frustrated me when Agares would fall to his knees and collapse after taking 2 steps into a room and being caught in spellfire. During battle, you can switch to your other characters to issue them with commands using L1 or R1 and use a radial wheel by pressing L2, allowing you to utilize any of your character's unlocked abilities. Unfortunately, on the PS3 version of the game, you can only hotkey bind up to 6 abilities that you can quickly access on the fly, with the rest being relegated to the radial menu. I used up one of my slots with the command to consume a curative item when the button is pressed, as it was not always good to rely on the healing abilities of mages to keep me out of a pickle, so technically I only had 5 hotkeys available. Additionally, as your party members all have default classes and skills, using them is pertinent to get through the adventure. Liliana in particular I found useful for picking locked chests and doors, whereas Zevran was great at stealthing enemies, setting traps, and throwing bombs from afar. When a character gets to a certain amount of experience either through battle or by completing quests, they will level up. When a character levels up, you can assign them stat points, choose new abilities, and sometimes choose new skills or improve existing ones. I did enjoy the amount of customization available, but found that Alistair and Oghren were practically mirrors of each other in the higher levels, as there weren't enough skill options for warriors, outside of limited disciplines such as two-handed combat or wielding a sword and shield for example. With magic users however, there are a variety of disciplines and within them a number of spells to learn, so there was enough difference between both Morrigan and Wynne to make them both viable characters, as you never have enough skill points to learn every single ability. As you are exploring, you can interact with points of interest to gain items which quite often were useless and only weighed down my character. As the inventory size is limited, you need to pick and choose what you want to collect from the environment. Some merchants do sell backpacks that increase your inventory size, yes, but even when I had a larger inventory size, I still found myself frequently nearing that limit and having to discard unnecessary items if I wanted to pick up anything else interesting that I came across. At least the game didn't go the route of The Witcher 2, which encumbered Geralt whenever he was over his carrying limit, forcing him to lumber at the speed of a pack mule. Playing the game now and looking back at the way in which it was presented, the game does not hold up very well. A lot of the textures are washed out and pixelated, and the environments are all very drab and gritty, which, to be fair, tends to be the case in earlier Western developed RPGs. There weren't many locations that I could say inspired awe in me, although I suppose that's to be expected considering the nature of war that's embattled the people of Thedas. Of all the locations, the worst for me was the Deep Roads, which lay out labyrinth-like caverns of solid rock with nothing interesting to view, and large open caverns of hewn stone with nary a sight to behold. Some people complain about the Fade section of the game being laborious. Well, at least that gives you an interesting mechanic to help you get through it, and something interesting to look at with the scenery. Additionally, in some of the locations, if there is too much action on the screen, the game will stutter and lag. I found this would happen in areas where there are a lot of enemies. At one point, my game even froze entirely, and I had to reboot and load an earlier save, which was disappointing. On the other hand, the character designs are unique and distinct, especially Morrigan, and I also enjoyed that the equipment you collected looked different upon your characters when equipped, though I wish there was a little more variety to the clothing. The music was composed by Inon Zur and Aubrey Ashburn, being pleasant to listen to from the sweeping orchestras to the hard drum beats and trumpeting fanfares. Outside of playing the game, I can't really say that there are many tracks that I would return to though. However, the pieces all found their places within Thedas and never grated or annoyed. My favourite track would have to be Liliana's song, where she sings in the camp, entrancing all of the other party members. It was a beautiful moment that impressed me greatly. To support all the dialogue, Dragon Age Origins has a large lineup of voice actors who really bring all the lines neatly together. I enjoyed the variation of accents to characters who hailed from different areas of Thedas, making the world more believable. I was even surprised to see that Liam O'Brien of Critical Role had a cameo appearance, and his voice is clearly distinguishable from the moment you hear him. I also really liked Alistair's voice actor, Stephen John Valentine, and Morrigan's, Claudia Black, the former full of self-deprecation whilst also being affable, whilst the later dripped every word with sarcasm and doubt. Any time that the two interacted with each other was pure joy. Dragon Age Origins was another of BioWare's attempt at a high fantasy setting where every decision made by the player would alter events of the world state, making the experience unique for different playstyles and playthroughs. Whilst the scope of the game was large, I felt that at times, the game was a little too big for its britches. I did not complete everything that there was to do, and it still took me almost 50 hours to beat the game. In an age where I am an adult with full adult responsibilities, time that can be spent in games of this scope is sorely limited. I felt like there was a little too much going on, with a lot of lore hidden within codexes that had to be read to understand the story. On the other hand, the characters were well written and likable, and I enjoyed the interactions that they had with each other out in the environment. Additionally, it was a shame that there wasn't too much variation within the warrior or rogue classes in comparison to what mages were offered, but possibly that will be improved upon in the next game. I did enjoy my experience overall, but it's unlikely that I will play through the game again anytime soon. By the way, what type of Grey Warden did you build? What was your favourite and least favourite part of the game, and how did you affect the world? Let me know in the comments. This has been Venwar with a review of Dragon Age Origins for the Sony PlayStation 3. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more great Western RPG content. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch my video to the end. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all again next time. Bye bye for now.